Hi, this is Chris Young, Chief Technologist for Micro Focus. And earlier today, Dan and I spoke with Citi about your VPE project. And if you recall, we talked about a couple topics. One, using Swagger files to generate automated load tests that can be run from a developer's IDE. We will cover this briefly within the video. We're also talked about chatbots and executing load tests directly from chatbots, and then also collecting uh, and doing analytics on previous performance data, um, looking for anomalies in future runs. So you're going to see each of these, but we're primarily going to be focused on the chatbot integration. So here is a screen of the web interface for LoadRunner, and there's a cloud version and an on-premise version. I'm showing you the cloud version that runs natively in AWS and dynamically scales up to meet demand. So as you create scripts, Amazon will automatically horizontally scale this application to meet the virtual users you want to test. And as you can see, when I enter this splash screen, I can create performance tests in a variety of ways. There's some simple tools where you can do simple REST tests or upload a HAR file that you recorded inside of the Chrome development tools, or you can even use a CSV with a form post and you put the URLs and a payload inside of it. But the real core area is right here under script assets. And as you can see, I've already uploaded a couple script assets in here. You can see we've got a Selenium script, a Gatling script, and then another type that we call TrueWeb. This is a JavaScript engine. I'm going to show you a little bit more detail behind the scenes momentarily. In addition to the assets that are here, we also have load tests. And you can see I have 2 load tests already created that are bound to those assets. But if I wanted to load up a new asset, it's pretty simple to do. All I have to do is take my files that comprise that asset, put them into a zip file, and then I can simply drag and place that directly here into LoadRunner. LoadRunner will ingest that file, and now that will be a script asset that I can run over and over again. So I just did that with a zip file directly from my PC. And now what I'm going to do is go in and do a load test and create a load test that consumes that zip file. So I called this my chained API test, and I'm going to go ahead and bind that script to it. So there was the script we are. Now we have this thing completely staged, and now I'm going to start working with the chatbot to interact with it. So again, here are our assets, and I'm going to leave the assets available so you can see them in the chatbot. So here's the code behind my chatbot. I'm using the Microsoft Chatbot SDK, but you could use anything you wanted to. In this case, just a couple highlights. You can see here sort of like the welcome when a new member connects to the chatbot. It'll basically welcome them, say, "Hey, welcome to the chatbot experience." If the chatbot doesn't know what you're saying, it'll basically give you a little help command, say, "Hey, I don't comprehend your command. Here are some things you might try." Another highlight: if you want to see any of the assets or load tests that are available over here, this interface is all fronted by a REST API. So anything you can do in the GUI, you can also do it from a REST API. So what the chatbot does is it actually calls that same API that you see over here, and then it will loop through. If I ask for load test, you can see it'll tell me how many of them are available, and then it'll loop through with each one and show me and give me a little message on how to do that. So this chatbot, I'm going to go ahead and fire it up. It runs under Node.js. And then as my client application, I have another little tool from Microsoft. Now this is their bot framework emulator. And again, very much like what the Chrome development tools are for the web, this is a little bot emulator that allows me to connect to that server, just as if I were connecting to Slack or a Skype chat bot that was hosted on Azure. I'm just running it locally. This gives me some nice little debug messages if I want to see what's going on in my chat window. And as you can see, it connected and showed me the welcome list. So over here, I'm going to put these two side by side so you can see what's going on. Here's my assets, my load test. So I'm going to go ahead and just give this guy a little hello world just to see what happens. So we're going to go ahead and send that. And of course, the chatbot doesn't know what to make of that. It says, okay, you said hello world. I don't comprehend your command. Try things like list scripts or run test, whatever. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and follow his instructions, and I'm going to say list. And then over here, we'll just basically tell it to list me the scripts. And then the chatbot will go off and do his work. And as you can see, it calls that REST API, and it matches one for what you see in the GUI. So in here, here's the Selenium, the Gatling, the True API, and you can see each one of these has a database ID where this information is stored inside the database. And if I wanted to run that, I could simply call the run script and then give it the numeric value, and it would go ahead and kick off that script. In this case, I'm interested in load tests. So let's go ahead and have our chatbot tell me about that. So over here, let's just say list load tests. We'll go ahead and get a list of our load tests. So again, he went out, called the API, got back the details, and as you can see, my Selenium test, my Gatling test, and then my chained API test. Now, earlier, we had created this chained API, and you can see it's got a little button where I could click the run test, and this would go ahead and create me a spooled up instance inside of AWS. Now I'm going to change a couple little values inside of here. Instead of leaving this to a default duration of 1 minute, I'm going to go ahead and change it to 30 seconds. And I'm also going to change this to be 5 V users. Now I could click this run test function, and it would go ahead and spool it up. But in this case, I'm going to have the chatbot do it instead. So right now, I've got this saved. I'm going to go ahead and click over here in my load tests, make sure that it's all ready and staged to go, and then we're going to kick it off from the chatbot. So our chatbot said, okay, here are your 3 load tests. If you want to run one, you can just simply type this right here. So I'm just going to go right in here, and I'm going to say run test 115. And when I do this and I hit an enter, LoadRunner is going to do the exact same thing as if I had gone over here and clicked this button. So let me go ahead and refresh this page, and you'll see that test is now initializing. And I'm going to go ahead and click it so that you can see what's going on behind the scenes. Right now, AWS, by virtue of me sending the chatbot command, he went ahead and kicked off run ID 37. So AWS is out here provisioning that environment. You can see it's doing one in Northern Virginia, and it's going to go ahead and run this load test with 5 virtual users, and it's going to do it for 30 seconds. So I'm going to pause for just a moment and then introduce you to the actual script that's running behind the scenes. Now, while our AWS instance is running that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to the code that's running behind the scenes. Over here is our main.js. This is the script that we uploaded a few moments ago, and as you can see, it's all written inside of JavaScript. There's actually 2 API calls. There's this number to word function, and then there's this all uppercase with token function. And just to quickly show you where I got these, I'm going to go ahead and show you there's 2 public facing APIs. You could use these for your test if you wanted to. Number 1 is this number conversion service. Here's the REST endpoint. And as you can see, it has a real simple utility that you basically pass it an input with a numeric value such as 10, and then it will actually give you the alphanumeric value that equates to that. Then the second function, which is our text casing service, if we fed it an input data with a delimiter, it would go ahead and uppercase anything on that input and then put the delimiter between each of the characters. So what we're going to do is we're going to chain these 2 API calls together. So we're going to feed it a numeric input. It's going to convert it to its word equivalent. Then we're going to feed that word equivalent into the second call with the delimiter and output something like this. So behind the scenes here, we have some expected data. So I went ahead and created a simple CSV file with sort of the inputs that we want to throw at this thing, and then some of our expected values inside of here. So as you can see, if I were chaining these APIs together, I would send in a 0, The first one would convert that to its alphanumeric equivalent, its word, ZERO, and then the second one would uppercase it and put the dashes between it. So we would expect to get these values. So if we look at these four values, we would expect the first three to pass, and then this last one is going to fail because obviously it's not uppercased and it doesn't have the dashes. Now, while this was all running, you can see the chatbot kicked that off and it sent me back the details. I have a report waiting for me. So AWS is already finished, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the remainder here of the load test itself. So as you can see, there's a neat little YAML file here that tells it how to enumerate through that CSV. So we're going to use that CSV. We're going to do a sequential iteration through the file. We're basically going to read the input value and the expected result. We're going to read that into two JavaScript variables called input and expect. So those are right here inside of my code. So what we're going to do, here is our first API entry point, and as you can see, we're going to use the input variable, which is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. We're going to feed that into the first API call. It's going to execute. Then we're going to take that web response that comes back from that first one, and we're actually going to feed that into the second call, putting a delimiter here, and then we're keeping timers for each of these transactions. Here's the start and the stop of this thing when that code executes. Again, here's the start and the stop. So we'll keep sort of waypoints as we execute through this code. And then finally, down here at the bottom, we got a real simple assert statement. What we're going to do is we're going to say, here's what we sent, here's what we expected back, and then here was the actual response we got back from the second web call. And then we're going to do a simple assert here where we're going to say, does what we got back match what we expected? If it does, we're going to pass the transaction. If we don't, we're going to fail the transaction. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to run this directly from the IDE rather than sending it on up to LoadRunner. Very, very simple. Inside of here is another YAML. Here's where I define my virtual users. In this case, I'm going to do one virtual user, and I'm going to let it run for a duration of 5 seconds, as many transactions that I can run inside of here. So when I do this, I've already got a little template defined in my Visual Studio Code here where I can run this as a load test. It's going to go ahead and feed all this data in, and we're going to run this as a load test. So we're going to run it, and as many transactions as it can fit in that number of seconds, that's what it will do. So it ran for 5 seconds. As you can see, we've got some of the function calls here where we feed it a value of 0, then it feeds us back that from the first function, and then more from the second function. All this is traceable. But the neat thing is all of my results, including all of the data, has been captured into a SQLite database. So if we come right over here, we can see every transaction we ran inside of this. So I'm going to close out the debug window here and close this window down so we can see that in a full view. So here was each transaction that we ran through that simulated load test inside of my IDE. So here was the numbers to word function. You can see that ran for 118 milliseconds, and here's the timestamp in which that function occurred. The all uppercase with token ran for 41 milliseconds, and here it is. Here's our simple assert statement. You can see a 0. We expected this value. We got this value. It passed. We do the same. As you can see, it's iterating through all those different values, but when we come over here to 3, you can see transaction 3 failed because the assert was not correct, because the data that we put in here, we coded it for failure. And so that's basically how this works. Is it's keeping track of all the transactions. They're all inside of here. Now, the beauty of this is that's exactly what are in my report. So if I come back over here to StormRunner, you can see we got a report. It ran for 30 seconds. LoadRunner ran our load test here, and it captured a bunch of information. And if we go over here to our report and we pull up the transactions, you can see we ran somewhere 345 total transactions. Of those, 30 failed. And I'm going to go ahead and pull the individual transactions here so you can see this. And so very similar to what we saw in the IDE, we have the same load generator going on over here. We ran, 125 occurrences of all uppercase with tokens and num to words. Here is each one of those things. 0, 1, and 2 all passed. The one that had the invalid value failed, and you can see that failed 30 times. So we ran all of this together. Now, as we were doing this, you saw that email came in. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that email up for you guys. Here is that email, and again, we'll bring up this PDF, and you can see this is test number 37, which again matches exactly what I got back in my chatbot. The chatbot said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and run this for you. And he ran run 37 and then sent me an email when he was done that was exactly like this report. Here I am, and we get the exact information that we're showing on the GUI screen over here. There's our transaction passes and fails. So basically we have a front-end GUI interface, we have a report that comes back, and then we have a chat bot. All those things match. Everything was run via the chat bot, and we're ready to go. I hope this was informative. Let me know if you have any questions, and please feel free to watch some of my other videos.